What kind of woman mails back her wedding ring and vanishes without a word after the man she loved sacrificed everything to build her career? Tonight, Meghan Markle's closest friend on Suits, Sarah Rafferty, shatters the fairy tale image of the Duchess with chilling revelations about how Meghan allegedly betrayed Trevor Engelson, the man who stood by her through years of struggle. Sarah claims Meghan coldly ghosted Trevor the moment she tasted fame, cutting all contact and mailing back her engagement ring like he was nothing more than an afterthought. Why is Sarah speaking out now? And what does this say about the real Meghan Markle behind the polished public image? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking details, the heartbreak, and the ruthless ambition that left even Sarah questioning who her best friend really was. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all started with a friendship that seemed unbreakable, two women navigating the cutthroat world of Hollywood together, sharing secrets, laughter, and dreams. Sarah Rafferty and Meghan Markle were more than just co-stars on the hit TV show Suits. They were best friends, confidants, and sisters-in-arms in an industry that often demanded more than it gave. But now, years later, that friendship lies in ruins, and Sarah has finally decided to break her silence about what she witnessed behind the glamorous facade of Meghan Markle's rise to fame. According to Sarah, the Meghan Markle the world has come to know, the Duchess, the humanitarian, the feminist icon, is very different from the Meghan she once knew. Behind the dazzling smile and carefully crafted public image, Sarah claims, is a woman capable of betrayal so cold it left people who loved her shattered in its wake. At the heart of this explosive revelation is Trevor Engelson, the man who gave Meghan his heart, his unwavering support, and years of his life, only to be discarded like a worn-out prop when he was no longer part of her plan. Sarah doesn't mince her words. In a voice heavy with regret, she describes how she watched Meghan systematically erase Trevor from her life the moment she landed her breakthrough role on Suits. Trevor helped build her career, Sarah says. He sacrificed so much for her. But once she got what she wanted, she didn't even say goodbye. She just mailed back her engagement ring. That was her goodbye. This is not just another celebrity gossip story. This is a tale of love, ambition, and the devastating human cost of ruthless self-preservation. It's about how fame can twist relationships and how those closest to us can sometimes hurt us the most. Sarah's account paints a vivid picture of Meghan as a woman laser-focused on her goals. Even before Suits, she was ambitious, determined, and unafraid to chase what she wanted. But Sarah says that once success came, so did a chilling change. The Meghan who used to cry on the phone to Trevor after failed auditions became someone Sarah hardly recognized, a woman who seemed willing to sacrifice anyone and anything that didn't fit into her new world. Trevor and Meghan's love story had begun years earlier, a sweet, supportive relationship that seemed strong enough to withstand anything. Trevor, a successful producer, believed in Meghan's talent even when Hollywood didn't. He encouraged her, financed her, and stood by her side through the rejections and disappointments. When Meghan landed the role of Rachel Zane on Suits, it was supposed to be their shared triumph. But Sarah alleges it marked the beginning of the end. Trevor thought this was their moment, Sarah recalls. He had been there through it all, the long nights, the endless auditions, the rejections. But as soon as Meghan got that call from Suits, it was like a switch flipped. She started seeing herself as part of a new world, and Trevor didn't fit into that picture. According to Sarah, Meghan became more distant, her calls to Trevor less frequent, her visits home rarer. She began surrounding herself with new friends, people who were already in the Hollywood scene, people who could help her climb higher. Trevor, who had always been her anchor, suddenly felt like dead weight dragging her down. But what shocked Sarah most wasn't the gradual drift. It was the cold, calculated way Meghan ended things. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a conversation. One day Trevor received a package. Inside was her engagement ring. No note. No explanation. That's how she ended it. After years together, after everything he did for her, she ended it with a package. Trevor, blindsided and heartbroken, allegedly tried to reach out. But Meghan had already blocked his number, changed her email, and moved on. Sarah says she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Trevor was devastated. He couldn't understand how someone he loved so much, someone he believed loved him back, could just cut him off like that. He kept asking me, "Did I do something wrong? Is there someone else?" But the truth was, Meghan had outgrown him, or at least that's how she saw it. Sarah admits she struggled with her loyalty. Meghan had been her friend too, someone she had shared countless hours with on set, confided in, and laughed with. But watching Trevor's pain, she began to question everything she thought she knew about Meghan. At first, I tried to defend her, Sarah says quietly. I told Trevor maybe she was overwhelmed, maybe she needed space. But deep down, I think I knew. This wasn't about space. This was about ambition. Meghan had decided Trevor wasn't part of the life she wanted anymore, and she was ruthless about cutting him out. As Meghan's star continued to rise, so did Sarah's discomfort. She started to see patterns, other friends, and even family members Meghan had cut off, people who had been close to her for years. The narrative Meghan presented to the public was one of empowerment and self-love. But Sarah says the reality was far less flattering. Fame changes people, Sarah says. But I never thought it would change Meghan like this. The girl I met when we started Suits, she was warm, funny, loyal. But somewhere along the way, she became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could hurt people and not look back. Sarah insists she kept silent for years out of respect for their former friendship. But seeing Trevor's ongoing struggle to heal, and watching Meghan's carefully curated public image grow ever more polished, she says she couldn't stay quiet any longer. People deserve to know the truth, Sarah says. Trevor deserves to have his story told. He's not some footnote in Meghan Markle's journey to royalty. He's a man who loved her, who helped her, and who was left broken by her. This story is more than just Hollywood drama. It's a window into the high cost of ambition and the way relationships can be sacrificed on the altar of fame. It raises questions about loyalty, love, and the masks we wear in public. And as Sarah's revelations ripple through the media, the world is left to wonder, who is the real Meghan Markle? The story of Meghan Markle and Trevor Engelson began far from the glittering lights of Hollywood, in a world where dreams were still fragile and fame seemed like a distant possibility. It was in the early 2000s, in Los Angeles, that their paths first crossed. Meghan was a struggling actress, working tirelessly to make a name for herself in an industry that often devoured young talent as quickly as it discovered it. Trevor, on the other hand, was already making waves as a producer, respected in his field for his sharp instincts and ability to bring projects to life. Their connection was almost instant. Friends who witnessed their first meeting said there was a spark between them that couldn't be ignored. Meghan, with her radiant smile and magnetic presence, drew people in effortlessly. Trevor, confident and grounded, seemed to balance her energy perfectly. They began dating soon after, and for Meghan, Trevor became more than just a boyfriend. He was her biggest cheerleader, her confidant, and her rock. At the time, Meghan's career was still in its infancy. She was booking small roles, background parts in TV shows, a few lines in films, and the occasional commercial. It was a grind, but Trevor believed in her. He saw her potential and often told friends she was destined for something big. Meghan herself was determined. She had grown up watching her father, Thomas Markle, work as a lighting director in Hollywood, and she knew the challenges of the industry. She was willing to work hard, but she also leaned on Trevor for emotional and sometimes financial support during those lean years. Trevor was there through all the rejections, Sarah Rafferty would later recall. He was there for every tearful phone call after a failed audition, every night Meghan doubted herself. He reminded her that she had what it took, even when she didn't believe it herself. Those who knew them in those days said Trevor's support went beyond words. He helped pay for acting classes, headshots, and even introduced Meghan to people in his network who could offer her opportunities. He wasn't just her boyfriend, he was her partner in every sense of the word, invested in her dreams as if they were his own. Their relationship grew stronger with each passing year. In 2011, after nearly 7 years together, Trevor proposed. Meghan said yes, and their engagement was celebrated among friends and family as a perfect union of two ambitious, talented people. They married in a picturesque ceremony at the Jamaica Inn in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, in 2011. It was a small but joyful event, attended by close family and friends, with the ocean waves crashing gently in the background. To those present, it seemed like the beginning of a lifetime together. Meghan looked radiant, and Trevor couldn't stop smiling. Guests remember how Meghan made an emotional toast about Trevor being her safe place, and the one person who never let me feel like I was alone in this world. But even then, there were small signs, subtle, almost invisible, that hinted at a potential storm brewing. Meghan's career was beginning to show signs of momentum. She had started landing more significant roles, and her confidence was growing. Some noticed how she had begun to change, not dramatically, but in little ways. She was more focused on appearances, more particular about the people she surrounded herself with, and more invested in networking with Hollywood insiders. Trevor didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't let it show. He remained deeply in love with Meghan, still seeing her as the woman he fell for years earlier. He believed in her so completely that he never imagined she might be outgrowing him in ways he couldn't yet see. Sarah Rafferty, who joined the cast of Suits as Donna Paulson around this time, would later reflect on this dynamic. When Meghan got Suits, it was huge. This was her breakthrough. And Trevor was so proud of her. He told everyone, "This is it. This is her moment." But I think he underestimated how much that moment was going to change her and them. Suits was indeed Meghan's big break. Filmed in Toronto, the show required her to relocate, leaving Trevor in Los Angeles. At first, they tried to make the long-distance marriage work. Meghan would fly back to LA on weekends whenever she could, and Trevor visited her in Toronto. But as the months went on, the visits became less frequent. Meghan was busy filming, attending events, and immersing herself in her new life. Trevor remained patient. He sent care packages, planned romantic getaways, and even talked about moving to Toronto so they could be together. But Sarah says Meghan's priorities were shifting. She started seeing herself differently, Sarah said. She was getting recognized in public. People were talking about her character, Rachel Zane. She loved the attention. It wasn't that she stopped caring about Trevor, it's that she started caring more about where her career could take her. And in her mind, Trevor didn't fit into that picture anymore. Sarah noticed the changes not just in Meghan's relationship with Trevor, but in her overall demeanor. She became more guarded, more selective about her inner circle. She began spending time with co-stars and Toronto socialites. Trevor, still back in LA and deeply involved in his own projects, was slowly becoming a distant figure in her life. For Trevor, the realization came too late. Friends say he believed their marriage was going through a rough patch that they would overcome. He didn't suspect that Meghan had already made a decision that would end their relationship in the coldest way imaginable. Sarah's voice breaks slightly as she recalls those days. Trevor loved her so much. He believed in her. He never thought she could do what she did next. The day Trevor received the package is one Sarah says she will never forget. He called me, and I could barely understand him. He was crying so hard. He said, "She mailed me her rings. That's it. No note, no call, just the rings." He couldn't believe it. None of us could. That moment marked the end of Meghan and Trevor's story and the beginning of Sarah's disillusionment with her friend. "I defended her for years," Sarah says. "But watching what she did to Trevor changed how I saw her. He didn't deserve that. No one deserves that." The call that changed everything came on an ordinary afternoon. Meghan was sitting in the small Toronto apartment she had rented for pilot season when her phone rang. On the other end was her agent, his voice brimming with excitement. Meghan had landed the role of Rachel Zane on Suits. This was the breakthrough she had been waiting for, the moment every struggling actor dreams of. After years of rejections, small parts, and unpaid auditions, Meghan was finally on her way to stardom. For Trevor Engelson, the news was just as thrilling. He had been Meghan's steadfast supporter through her toughest years, and hearing her joy over the phone filled him with pride. To him, Suits wasn't just Meghan's victory, it was their victory. He celebrated the news with his friends, toasting Meghan's determination and his own faith in her. "This is her time," he reportedly said with a beaming smile. "She's worked so hard for this." But what Trevor didn't realize was that the call marked not only the beginning of Meghan's rise to fame, but also the first crack in the foundation of their marriage. Moving to Toronto for filming meant Meghan and Trevor would now be living apart. At first, they approached it with optimism. They'd survived challenges before, and this was supposed to be temporary. Meghan promised to visit LA whenever she could, and Trevor assured her he'd fly to Toronto often. They talked about video calls and weekend getaways, determined not to let distance erode what they had built over nearly a decade. For a while, it worked. Trevor visited Meghan on set, bringing her favorite snacks and taking her out to dinner after long days of shooting. Meghan gushed about her character and her co-stars, particularly Patrick J. Adams and Sarah Rafferty, who played Donna Paulson. She sent Trevor selfies from her trailer and even joked about how surreal it felt to have her own makeup artist. But as the months passed, something began to shift. Meghan's calls to Trevor became less frequent. Their conversations, once filled with warmth and humor, grew shorter and more perfunctory. Trevor, busy with his own work as a producer, tried not to worry. He chalked it up to Meghan's grueling shooting schedule and the stress of adjusting to her new life. Sarah Rafferty, who had quickly become one of Meghan's closest friends on set, noticed the changes too. Meghan was thriving in Toronto. She loved the independence, the new social circle she was building, and the thrill of recognition. Fans were beginning to approach her on the street, asking for autographs and photos. For the first time, Meghan felt like a star. She loved the attention, Sarah later said. It was intoxicating for her, and I think she started to see herself differently. She wasn't just Meghan from LA anymore. She was Rachel Zane. People admired her, wanted to be her, wanted to know her. It changed her. Sarah also noticed how Meghan's attitude toward Trevor began to cool. During long chats in Meghan's trailer, Sarah recalls asking her how the marriage was going. Meghan would smile faintly and say, "It's fine. Trevor's great." But there was something about the way she said it, detached, almost distracted, that made Sarah wonder. As Meghan's star rose, her priorities shifted. She began spending more time with her co-stars and Toronto's social elite. She attended charity events, fashion shows, and exclusive parties. Photos of Meghan with new friends started popping up on social media. Trevor, still in Los Angeles, was conspicuously absent from those photos. Back in LA, Trevor tried to stay supportive. He sent Meghan flowers on her first day of filming and congratulated her when Suits was picked up for a second season. But he couldn't ignore the growing distance between them. The woman who once called him every night before bed now went days without texting. Friends of Trevor later said he confided in them about his fears. "I feel like I'm losing her," he reportedly admitted. "It's like she's building a whole new life without me in it." Then came the incident that, to Sarah, marked a turning point. One evening after filming, Meghan and Sarah were having drinks in Meghan's apartment when Trevor called. Meghan glanced at her phone, saw his name on the screen, and let it go to voicemail. "Are you going to answer?" Sarah asked. Meghan sighed and shook her head. "Not right now. I'll call him later." But according to Sarah, she never did. "That's when I realized something was wrong," Sarah recalled. She wasn't angry with him. She wasn't upset. She just didn't seem to care. The drift became a chasm. Meghan's visits to LA grew rare. When she did go back, Sarah says, she seemed impatient, restless, as if she couldn't wait to return to Toronto. Trevor noticed it too. He began suggesting they go to couples counseling, but Meghan brushed off the idea. "We're fine," she would say, forcing a smile. Sarah believes Meghan had already made up her mind. She didn't see Trevor as part of her future anymore, Sarah said. She was polite about it, but underneath, she was cold. She was already planning her exit. The final blow came one autumn morning when Trevor received a package at his home in Los Angeles. Inside was Meghan's engagement ring, carefully wrapped in tissue paper. There was no note, no explanation, nothing but the ring. Trevor was stunned. He tried calling Meghan, but her number had been disconnected. Emails bounced back. It was as if she had vanished from his life overnight. "He was destroyed," Sarah said. "He kept asking me, why? What did I do wrong?" But the truth was, Trevor didn't do anything wrong. Meghan had decided she didn't need him anymore. And once she made that decision, she didn't look back. Sarah struggled with her own emotions. Meghan had been her friend too. But watching Trevor's heartbreak and Meghan's coldness left her shaken. "I started to see a different side of her," Sarah admitted. "The ambition was always there. But now I saw how far she was willing to go. She didn't just leave Trevor, she erased him." This was the beginning of Meghan's transformation, from an aspiring actress to a woman who, in Sarah's words, saw everything and everyone as stepping stones. It was also the beginning of the end of Sarah and Meghan's friendship. After what she did to Trevor, Sarah sighed. But Meghan's rise was only just beginning. Suits would make her a household name and open doors that would eventually lead her across the Atlantic and into one of the most famous families in the world. And for Trevor Engelson, all that was left was the memory of a love that once felt unbreakable and the sharp, cold reality of how easily it had been cast aside. When Meghan Markle first left Los Angeles for Toronto to begin filming Suits, she and Trevor Engelson reassured each other that the distance was temporary. They had survived so much together, years of rejection, financial strain, and uncertainty, and they both believed that their bond was strong enough to withstand a few hundred miles. In those early days, they clung to that belief like a lifeline, determined to make their marriage work. But as the weeks turned into months, something shifted. What had once been a relationship built on shared dreams and mutual support began to feel unbalanced. The first cracks appeared in subtle ways: a missed phone call here, a delayed text reply there. Trevor tried to ignore it at first, attributing Meghan's distraction to the demands of her new job. He told himself she was simply busy, adjusting to her role as Rachel Zane and navigating the pressures of a major TV production. "This is her time to shine," Trevor reportedly told a friend during a late-night conversation. "I don't want to get in the way. She's worked so hard for this." But deep down, Trevor could sense a change. Meghan's voice on their calls no longer carried the same warmth. She no longer spoke about her longing to come home or shared her excitement about the little details of her day. Instead, their conversations became mechanical, quick check-ins rather than heartfelt connections. In Toronto, Meghan was embracing her new life. The city's vibrant social scene and the camaraderie among the Suits cast offered her a fresh start. She attended charity galas, posed for glossy magazine features, and began cultivating a circle of friends who were well-connected in the entertainment and fashion industries. Sarah Rafferty noticed the change too. As Meghan's co-star and confidant, she spent hours with her on and off set. Meghan often spoke of her ambitions, her desire to break out of the pretty girl roles and establish herself as a serious actress. But it wasn't just her career Meghan seemed to be reimagining, it was her entire identity. Meghan was evolving, Sarah said later. She was thinking about where she wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years. And I think she started to feel like Trevor didn't fit into that picture anymore. The signs of strain grew more visible. Meghan stopped wearing her wedding ring when she was in Toronto. When asked about it by colleagues, she would brush off the questions with vague answers about forgetting it in LA or needing to have it resized. Trevor, meanwhile, grew increasingly uneasy. He flew to Toronto as often as he could, hoping to bridge the growing distance between them. But those visits were fraught with tension. Meghan seemed distracted, her attention always half-turned toward her phone or her next engagement. When Trevor suggested they spend more time alone together, Meghan would counter with plans that included her co-stars or new Toronto friends. During one visit, Trevor proposed they take a weekend trip to reconnect. Meghan hesitated before replying, "I just don't think I have the time right now. Things are so hectic here." Trevor's heart sank. He tried to mask his disappointment, but Sarah, who met him during that trip, noticed the strain in his eyes. "He looked like a man trying desperately to hold on to something that was already slipping away," she said. Back in Los Angeles, Trevor confided in close friends about his fears. He admitted he felt like an outsider in Meghan's new world. "She's becoming someone I don't recognize," he reportedly told a friend. "It's like she's building a whole new life up there, and I'm not part of it." Despite his efforts, Trevor's visits became less frequent. Meghan didn't encourage him to come, and when he did, she seemed to treat his presence as an obligation rather than a joy. The woman who once clung to him during her darkest moments was now slipping through his fingers. Sarah found herself in a difficult position. As Meghan's friend, she wanted to support her ambitions. But as she grew closer to Trevor during his visits, she began to empathize with his pain. "I started to see both sides," Sarah said. Meghan was determined not to let anything hold her back. But Trevor didn't deserve to be shut out like that. He had been her rock for so long. One night, over drinks with Meghan, Sarah tentatively brought up Trevor. "How's he doing? It must be hard being apart so much." Meghan's response was chilling in its detachment. "Trevor's fine. He'll be fine. I need to focus on what's happening here." Sarah didn't press further, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Meghan had already emotionally checked out of her marriage. As time passed, Meghan's communication with Trevor dwindled further. She stopped returning his calls promptly, sometimes taking days to respond to his messages. When she did reply, her texts were brief and impersonal. Trevor, growing increasingly desperate, suggested couples therapy. Meghan dismissed the idea. "We don't need that," she said flatly. "It's just the distance. Once the season wraps, things will go back to normal." But Sarah suspected Meghan had no intention of returning to their old life. The breaking point came during a visit Trevor made to Toronto in the spring. He arrived hoping to reignite the spark in their relationship. But Meghan seemed irritated by his presence, more concerned with attending a networking dinner than spending time alone with him. That night, after an argument in Meghan's apartment, Trevor flew back to LA early. Sarah, who saw him before he left, recalled how broken he looked. "He didn't even seem angry, just defeated," she said. Trevor still held out hope. He sent Meghan flowers and tried to schedule another visit. But Meghan stopped responding altogether. Then, weeks later, the package arrived at Trevor's home. Inside was Meghan's wedding ring, wrapped neatly in tissue paper. There was no note, no explanation, just the cold, silent end of a marriage that had once felt unshakable. For Trevor, it was a devastating blow. He had believed in Meghan, supported her, and loved her unconditionally. To be discarded so abruptly, without even a phone call, left him reeling. Sarah, too, was shaken. She had defended Meghan for months, telling herself that her friend was just overwhelmed by her new life. But seeing Trevor's heartbreak forced her to confront a painful truth. Meghan's ambition had left no room for loyalty. I don't think she meant to be cruel, Sarah reflected later. But in her mind, Trevor was part of her old life. And Meghan was never one to look back. The drift between Meghan and Trevor had begun as a crack. By the time the ring arrived in the mail, it had become an unbridgeable chasm. And as Meghan's star continued to rise, Trevor was left behind, just another casualty of her relentless climb to the top. Sarah Rafferty had always prided herself on being a loyal friend. On the set of Suits, she and Meghan had been nearly inseparable, sharing long conversations between scenes, laughing over dinners, and supporting each other through the challenges of working in an industry as cutthroat as Hollywood. To Sarah, Meghan wasn't just a colleague, she was family. But as she watched Meghan's relationship with Trevor Engelson unravel, Sarah began to see a side of her friend she hadn't noticed before. A colder, more calculating side that made her question everything she thought she knew about the woman she once considered her closest confidant. At first, Sarah brushed aside her misgivings. Meghan was under immense pressure. Starring in a hit TV show for the first time in her career, she was constantly in the spotlight. Maybe the stress was getting to her. Maybe the distance from Trevor was more painful than Meghan let on. Sarah wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. But then came the conversations. Trevor just doesn't get it, Meghan said one night after filming, sipping wine in her Toronto apartment. He doesn't understand the world I'm in now. He's stuck in LA, producing these small projects, and I'm on a different path. Sarah had frowned at the time. But he's been there for you, hasn't he? All these years. Meghan shrugged, her expression unreadable. That was then. Things change. People change. I need to be around people who inspire me, who understand ambition. It wasn't just what Meghan said that unsettled Sarah, it was how she said it. There was no malice in her voice, but there was a chilling finality, a sense that Trevor's role in her story had already come to an end. As the months passed, these remarks became more frequent. Meghan confided in Sarah about her frustrations with Trevor, painting him as someone holding her back. He doesn't fit in with the people I'm meeting now, Meghan admitted one evening. It's like he's comfortable where he is. I can't be with someone who doesn't want more. Sarah found herself torn. On one hand, she understood Meghan's drive. Ambition had fueled her rise from near obscurity to starring in a primetime television show. But on the other hand, Sarah couldn't ignore how casually Meghan dismissed the man who had been her biggest supporter. Trevor loves you, Sarah reminded her gently. He believed in you when no one else did. Meghan's response was cold and startling. That was his choice. Then came the moment Sarah could no longer defend Meghan. It was late one night, and the two women were sitting in Meghan's living room, scrolling through photos on Sarah's phone. They came across a picture from Meghan's wedding to Trevor, a sunlit day in Jamaica, filled with laughter and love. Sarah smiled as she remembered the moment. You two were so happy that day. Do you ever think about how far you've come since then? Meghan glanced at the screen, her expression hardening. That girl isn't me anymore. That life isn't mine anymore. The words hit Sarah like a slap. But it was your life. You loved him. Meghan set her glass down with a sigh. I love the idea of him. But love isn't enough when you're trying to build something bigger. Trevor doesn't get it. He never will. Sarah didn't know what to say. In that moment, she realized Meghan had already emotionally severed herself from her husband. To Meghan, Trevor was no longer a partner. He was a relic of a past she wanted to leave behind. It was around this time that Meghan began referring to Trevor as a chapter that's closed. She didn't speak of him with anger or bitterness. There was no emotion at all. To Sarah, this detachment was more alarming than any shouting match or tearful confession could have been. It wasn't like she hated him, Sarah later reflected. It was worse. It was like he didn't matter anymore. Like he'd been erased from her story. The final straw for Sarah came when Meghan confided her plan to end the marriage. I'm going to send the ring back, Meghan said one night, her voice calm, almost clinical. Sarah stared at her in shock. What do you mean, send it back? You're not even going to call him. Meghan shook her head. There's no point in dragging it out. A conversation would just make it harder for both of us. This way is cleaner. Cleaner. Sarah echoed, her stomach churning. He's your husband, Meghan. He deserves more than a package in the mail. Meghan's eyes flashed with a steely determination Sarah had never seen before. I can't afford to let emotions get in the way. I have to focus on my future. Sarah walked home that night in a daze. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. For years, she had admired Meghan's drive and determination. But now, she saw those qualities in a different light. That was when I realized Meghan was capable of ruthlessness, Sarah said later. She could cut someone out of her life as easily as deleting a contact from her phone. And once she decided to do it, there was no turning back. When Trevor called Sarah weeks later, sobbing into the phone about the ring he had received in the mail, she didn't know how to comfort him. She didn't even call me, Trevor said, his voice breaking. After everything, she didn't even say goodbye. Sarah felt a wave of guilt. She had known Meghan's plan, but hadn't been able to stop her. I'm so sorry, Trevor, she whispered. You didn't deserve this. For Sarah, that moment marked the end of her friendship with Meghan. I couldn't look at her the same way after that, Sarah admitted. I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. The Meghan I thought I knew would never have hurt someone like that. In the years that followed, Sarah kept her silence. She watched from afar as Meghan's star continued to rise, from suits to royal engagements, from glossy magazine covers to global fame. But she couldn't forget the coldness she had witnessed, the way Meghan had discarded Trevor without a second thought. People see the glamorous Meghan now, Sarah said, but they don't see the trail of broken relationships she left behind. Trevor wasn't the first, and I doubt he'll be the last. Sarah's allegations paint a disturbing picture of a woman willing to sacrifice anyone and anything in her quest for success. And as the world continues to debate Meghan Markle's true character, Sarah's story stands as a chilling reminder of the human cost of ambition unchecked. The story of how Meghan Markle ended her marriage to Trevor Engelson has been whispered about in Hollywood circles for years, but Sarah Rafferty's account brings it into sharp, devastating focus. According to Sarah, it was not a messy confrontation, not even a tearful farewell. Instead, it was one of the coldest, most calculated gestures Sarah had ever witnessed, a gesture that still haunts her whenever she thinks of Trevor. It began with a conversation between Meghan and Sarah late one night after filming. Meghan had been unusually quiet all evening, swirling her wine glass in her hand and staring out the window at the Toronto skyline. I've made a decision, Meghan said finally, her voice steady. Sarah looked up, startled. About what? About Trevor. I'm ending it. There was no hesitation in her tone, no sign of uncertainty or sadness. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Are you sure this is what you want? She asked cautiously. It's what I need, Meghan replied. I can't move forward if I'm still tied to my past. Trevor is part of that past. Sarah tried to reason with her. You've been together for nearly a decade. He supported you through everything. Don't you think he deserves at least a conversation? An explanation? But Meghan shook her head. A conversation would just make it harder. For both of us. I've thought about this, Sarah. The cleanest way is to send the ring back. No calls. No emails. Just the ring. Sarah was horrified. She begged Meghan to reconsider, to pick up the phone and talk to Trevor, to give him the closure he deserved. But Meghan remained unmoved. He'll understand eventually, Meghan said coldly. He's strong. He'll move on. Sarah didn't argue further. She knew Meghan well enough to recognize that her mind was made up. Once Meghan made a decision, there was no persuading her otherwise. Weeks later, the package arrived at Trevor's Los Angeles home. It was a small box, unremarkable except for the weight it carried. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was Meghan's engagement ring and wedding band. There was no letter, no note, not even a single sentence to explain why the woman he had loved and supported for nearly 10 years was suddenly erasing him from her life. Trevor was blindsided. He called me as soon as he opened it, Sarah recalled. He could barely speak. He was sobbing so hard I could barely make out the words. All he kept saying was, why? Why would she do this? Sarah's heart broke for him. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing Trevor's devastation firsthand made it all the more real and unbearable. I didn't know what to say, Sarah admitted. What could I say? That I had tried to stop her? That I had warned her it would crush him? None of that would change the fact that Meghan had made her choice. Trevor reportedly tried to call Meghan multiple times after receiving the package, but she didn't answer. His emails went unanswered. Mutual friends said Meghan had blocked Trevor's number and changed her email address. It was as if she had disappeared, leaving nothing but memories and a cold piece of metal to signify the end of their life together. It was like she'd never existed, one of Trevor's friends said. One day she was his wife, and the next she was a ghost. Sarah still remembers the last time she spoke to Trevor about Meghan. He sounded like a man utterly broken. I don't even recognize her anymore, he told her. The woman I married would never have done this. It's like she's become someone else. Sarah had no words of comfort to offer. In truth, she didn't recognize Meghan either. It was chilling, Sarah confessed. Watching her pack up that ring, watching her seal the box, there was no sadness in her eyes. No hesitation. It was like she was sending back a pair of shoes she didn't want anymore. Friends close to Meghan later said she spoke about the breakup in clinical terms. It was holding me back, she reportedly told one confidant. Trevor was part of a life I've outgrown. I don't regret it. I needed to let go to become who I'm meant to be. To Sarah, those words were like knives. Trevor wasn't perfect, Sarah admitted. But he loved her. He supported her. He believed in her when no one else did. To discard him like that, it was heartless. Sarah herself felt betrayed. Not because Meghan had ended her marriage, sometimes relationships fail, but because of the cold, calculated way she had done it. I kept thinking, if Meghan could do this to Trevor, what would she do to the rest of us when we no longer served her purpose? It was the question that began to erode their friendship. The aftermath of Meghan's decision was devastating for Trevor. He stopped taking meetings. Friends said he lost weight, barely ate, and withdrew from the world. He was plagued with sleepless nights, endlessly replaying their years together in his mind, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. She didn't even say goodbye, he told Sarah during one of their late-night phone calls. She just ended it, like I was nothing. In the months that followed, Meghan's career flourished. She became a household name, her character on Suits beloved by fans around the world. She appeared on red carpets, smiled for photographers, and began cultivating the polished public image that would later captivate even the British royal family. But behind the smiles and the designer gowns was a man still struggling to piece his life back together. I don't think Trevor ever got over it, Sarah said. Not because he wanted her back, but because of the way it ended. There was no closure, just emptiness. Sarah's voice wavered as she reflected on that time. If Meghan had just picked up the phone, if she had given him a chance to say goodbye, maybe it wouldn't have hurt so much. But that's not who she was anymore. Meghan was already looking ahead. She didn't care about the wreckage she left behind. It was a harsh realization for Sarah, and one that marked the beginning. I started to see her for who she really was, Sarah admitted. Someone who could cut people out of her life without a second thought. Someone for whom loyalty only mattered as long as it was convenient. For Trevor, the ring in the mailbox was the final chapter of a love story he thought would last a lifetime. For Meghan, it was merely a stepping stone to something bigger. And for Sarah, it was the moment she realized that fame and ambition had transformed her friend into a stranger. In the months following her split from Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle threw herself headfirst into building not just her career, but an entirely new identity. To outsiders, it seemed like she had seamlessly transitioned from a struggling actress into a rising star. But those who had known her before noticed something deeper, an unrelenting drive to rewrite her life, leaving behind the people and relationships that no longer fit into her vision of success. Sarah Rafferty watched this transformation up close. At first, she admired Meghan's ability to network and seize opportunities. Hollywood was a competitive place, and few actors succeeded without cultivating connections. But as Meghan's star rose, Sarah began to notice a pattern. Meghan wasn't just networking, she was strategically climbing. After her breakout success on Suits, Meghan's world expanded rapidly. Invitations to exclusive parties, charity galas, and industry events poured in. She began rubbing shoulders with producers, directors, fashion designers, and socialites. Each interaction seemed deliberate, as if Meghan was building a carefully curated circle of people who could elevate her career. It was like watching someone climb a ladder, one rung at a time, Sarah later said. She always knew exactly where she wanted to go and who she needed to get there. Meghan started spending more time with high-profile figures in Toronto and Los Angeles. She appeared at Soho House events, a members-only club frequented by celebrities and influencers. There, she mingled with people whose lives seemed worlds away from her quiet days with Trevor. She was reinventing herself, Sarah observed. The Meghan I met on set was sweet, funny, and a little unsure of herself. But this new Meghan, she was polished, confident, and completely focused. This transformation didn't go unnoticed by Meghan's old friends in Los Angeles. People who had once been part of her inner circle began to feel the distance. Calls and texts went unanswered. Invitations for casual dinners were declined. One of Meghan's former friends from LA confided to Sarah, "It's like she disappeared. Once she got on Suits, she stopped returning calls. I get it, she's busy. But it felt like more than that. It felt intentional." Sarah tried to defend Meghan at first. "She's under a lot of pressure," she told them. "Give her time to adjust." But deep down, even Sarah could see that Meghan wasn't just busy, she was cutting ties. As Meghan's new social circle solidified, her tastes and priorities began to shift. She embraced a more glamorous lifestyle, attending red carpet events and appearing in fashion spreads. Her Instagram feed became a portfolio of aspirational living, yoga poses, exotic vacations, designer clothes, and inspirational quotes about self-love and empowerment. It was all very curated, and Sarah began to wonder how much of the Meghan she saw online was real. She understood the power of image, Sarah recalled. Everything she posted, every event she attended, it was part of her brand. Meghan wasn't just building a career, she was building a persona. But for those who had been close to Meghan before fame, the change was jarring. It wasn't just Trevor she left behind, Sarah said. It was friends, too. People who had been there for her when she was nobody. Once they no longer fit her vision of where she was going, she let them go. One former friend put it more bluntly. Meghan is charming, no doubt about it. But she's also strategic. If you can't help her get to the next level, she doesn't have time for you. Sarah began to feel the strain in her own relationship with Meghan. On set, Meghan was still warm and friendly, but outside of work, she had become harder to reach. Invitations to hang out were often met with polite excuses. Meghan was busy with events, interviews, and dinners with people Sarah had never heard of before. "I started to realize I wasn't part of her new world," Sarah admitted. "She didn't need me the way she used to." It was a painful realization for Sarah, who had once considered Meghan her closest friend. Meanwhile, Meghan's career was flourishing. Suits was a hit, and her portrayal of Rachel Zane earned her a loyal fan base. She used her growing platform to speak out on issues of gender equality and empowerment, gaining admiration from both fans and media outlets. But behind the scenes, Sarah saw a different side of Meghan, one that was willing to make difficult, even ruthless, choices to stay on top. She knew how to play the game, Sarah said. She wasn't content with being a supporting actress on a cable drama. She wanted more fame, more influence, more power. As Meghan's profile grew, so did her ambitions. She hired a new publicist, one known for transforming actors into global brands. She began to express interest in humanitarian work, seeing it as a way to align her image with causes that would resonate with the public. She was thinking long-term, Sarah noted. She wanted to be more than an actress. She wanted to be a household name. Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. The woman she had met on the set of Suits, the one who used to vent about awkward auditions and laugh about bad dates, was gone. In her place was someone polished, poised, and untouchable. "It's like Meghan had built a wall around herself," Sarah said. "And unless you were part of her plan, you weren't getting in." For Meghan, it was all part of the climb. Every connection, every carefully crafted image, every move was designed to take her higher. And for those she left behind, Trevor, her old friends, even Sarah, the message was clear. Meghan Markle was moving on, and she wasn't looking back. The tension between Sarah Rafferty and Meghan Markle had been simmering for months, unspoken but undeniable. For Sarah, the shift in their friendship was painful to watch. Meghan had once been her closest confidant, the person she shared inside jokes with on set and texted late into the night about everything from bad dates to career frustrations. But as Meghan's star rose, their bond began to fray. Sarah had tried to ignore it at first. She told herself that Meghan was just busy, that the fame and responsibility of becoming a household name had consumed her time and energy. But deep down, Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was being pushed aside not out of necessity, but by choice. The final blow came not long after Meghan's marriage to Trevor Engelson imploded. Sarah had watched the entire ordeal unfold from the sidelines, helpless as her friend ended the nearly decade-long relationship in the coldest, most abrupt way possible. The package with the rings, the blocked calls, the radio silence, it was all so out of character from the Meghan Sarah had once known. Or maybe, Sarah thought bitterly, it wasn't out of character at all. She decided she couldn't stay quiet anymore. It was late evening on the Suits set when Sarah confronted Meghan. They had just wrapped filming for the day, and the crew was packing up. Meghan was seated in her trailer, scrolling through her phone, her posture relaxed. Sarah knocked softly before stepping inside. "Hey," Meghan said without looking up. "What's up?" Sarah took a deep breath. "We need to talk." Meghan glanced up, her expression unreadable. "About what?" "About Trevor. About what happened." For a moment, Meghan didn't respond. She set her phone down carefully on the table beside her and folded her hands in her lap. "There's nothing to talk about," she said finally. But Sarah wasn't convinced. "How can you say that? You ended your marriage without a conversation. You didn't even give him a chance to understand why. Don't you think he deserved better?" Meghan's jaw tightened. "Sarah, you don't understand. It wasn't working. Trevor and I were on different paths. The longer I stayed, the more I felt trapped. It wasn't fair to either of us." "Not fair," Sarah repeated incredulously. "Do you think it was fair to send his rings back in the mail? To block his calls? Meghan, he loved you. He supported you through everything. And you discarded him like he was nothing." Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. "I didn't discard him. I made a choice for my life. I refused to apologize for putting myself first." Sarah shook her head. "This isn't about putting yourself first. It's about basic decency. You didn't just break his heart, Meghan. You broke him." The two women stared at each other in silence for a moment, the weight of their words hanging heavy in the air. "Why are you even bringing this up?" Meghan asked finally, her tone icy. "What happens between me and Trevor is none of your business." "It became my business when I watched him fall apart," Sarah shot back. "It became my business when I saw the way you changed, how you cut people out of your life the moment they no longer fit your plans." Meghan stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Sarah countered. "I've been your friend for years, Meghan. I've seen your ambition, your drive. And I admired it. But this isn't ambition. This is cruelty." For a moment, Meghan's expression softened. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think I wanted to hurt him? You think I enjoyed this?" "I didn't, Sarah. But I had to let him go. He didn't belong in the life I'm building." "The life you're building?" Sarah echoed. "At what cost, Meghan? How many people have to get hurt along the way?" Meghan didn't answer. She turned away, crossing her arms over her chest. "I think you should go," she said quietly. Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. She had come into the trailer hoping to make Meghan see reason, to appeal to the friend she had once known. But looking at her now, Sarah realized that friend was gone. "I hope this life you're chasing is worth it," Sarah said softly. "Because at the rate you're going, there won't be anyone left to share it with." She turned and walked out, the sound of the door closing behind her echoing like a final goodbye. That night, Sarah lay awake in her apartment, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. She had tried to salvage their friendship, to make Meghan see the damage she was causing. But she knew it was futile. Meghan was on a path of her own making, one that left little room for loyalty, compassion, or old friends. "That was the last real conversation we ever had," Sarah would later say. "After that, things were never the same between us. I think a part of me knew our friendship was over." For Meghan, the confrontation seemed to have little impact. She continued to rise in fame, her public image carefully cultivated, her Instagram full of polished photos and empowering quotes. But for Sarah, the encounter marked the end of an era, the end of the Meghan she thought she knew, and the beginning of her disillusionment with the woman Meghan had become. For years, Trevor Engelson had been silent. While Meghan Markle's fame skyrocketed and her carefully constructed narrative captured headlines across the globe, Trevor kept his pain private. Those closest to him said he didn't want to air his grievances publicly, even as speculation swirled about why their nearly decade-long relationship had ended so abruptly. But in quiet moments with friends and family, Trevor's heartbreak was palpable. Sarah Rafferty, who had seen his devastation firsthand, recalled that Trevor wasn't just hurt, he was bewildered. He couldn't understand how the woman he'd loved and supported could shut him out like that, Sarah said. One day, they were partners. The next, he was nobody to her. Trevor had been there from the very beginning, long before Meghan's name appeared on TV screens and magazine covers. He had believed in her talent and ambition when Hollywood hadn't. He helped fund her acting classes, covered expenses when work was slow, and introduced her to people in his own network in the hope it might give her career a boost. He wasn't just her boyfriend. He was her foundation, said one mutual friend. Everything Meghan has today, Trevor was there at the start of it. After Meghan landed her breakthrough role on Suits, Trevor had been thrilled for her. He celebrated her victories as if they were his own, telling friends how proud he was of her resilience and determination. He even made plans to visit Toronto as often as possible so they could maintain their bond despite the physical distance. But Trevor was blindsided when Meghan began to pull away. At first, he noticed subtle changes: shorter phone calls, postponed visits, vague excuses about her schedule. But as the months went on, those small cracks widened into an unbridgeable gap. According to a close friend of Trevor's, he often blamed himself during this period. He'd say, "Maybe I didn't support her enough. Maybe I wasn't ambitious enough for her." But the truth is, Trevor did everything for Meghan. She just didn't want him anymore, and she didn't have the courage to tell him face to face. Trevor's confusion turned into anguish when the package arrived at his Los Angeles home. Inside were Meghan's engagement and wedding rings, delivered without a note, a phone call, or even a text message. That moment destroyed him, Sarah said quietly. He kept asking, why would she do this? After everything, why would she end it like this? In the days that followed, Trevor tried desperately to reach Meghan. He called, he emailed, he even asked mutual friends to intervene. But Meghan didn't respond. It was like she'd vanished, one friend said. She cut him off completely. For Trevor, the silence was the cruelest part. If she had just told me it was over, I could have handled it, he confided to a friend. But this feels like I never mattered to her at all. In the months after the breakup, Trevor retreated from the world. Friends noticed he lost weight, his usually energetic personality replaced by a quiet sadness. He stopped attending industry events and declined invitations from mutual friends. Sarah, who kept in touch with him during this time, described Trevor as a man grappling with more than just heartbreak. It wasn't just that he lost his wife. It was that he lost his faith in people. He had believed in Meghan so completely, and to see her turn cold like that, it broke something in him. Trevor's pain wasn't just emotional. The public nature of Meghan's rise meant he couldn't escape reminders of her. As Suits became a hit, Meghan's face was everywhere, on billboards, in magazines, on talk shows. And later, when news broke that she was dating Prince Harry, Trevor was once again thrust into the media spotlight he never wanted. Reporters began digging into his past, hoping to uncover scandal or bitterness. But Trevor refused to take the bait. He declined interviews, stayed off social media, and offered no public comment on Meghan's new life. He didn't want to be part of her story anymore, said a friend. He wanted to heal and move on. Despite his efforts to stay private, whispers about Trevor and Meghan's relationship persisted. Some painted Trevor as a man left behind, unable to keep up with Meghan's ambitions. Others viewed him as a tragic figure, discarded by a woman who had outgrown him. Sarah, however, rejected those narratives. Trevor isn't a tragic figure, she said firmly. He's a good man who loved deeply and was hurt deeply. But he's stronger than people give him credit for. Over time, Trevor began to rebuild his life. He poured his energy into his work, producing a series of successful projects. He found love again and eventually remarried. But those close to him say the scars from his relationship with Meghan never fully healed. It changed him, Sarah admitted. He's more guarded now, more cautious. But he's also wiser. He knows now that not everyone deserves your loyalty. For Trevor, Meghan is a chapter of his life he prefers to keep closed. He rarely speaks of her and avoids watching anything that might remind him of their time together. But for Sarah, the memory of Trevor's heartbreak remains vivid, a reminder of how ambition, when left unchecked, can leave devastation in its wake. Trevor gave Meghan everything, Sarah said. And in the end, she gave him nothing, not even the dignity of a goodbye.